What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to do a transmission fluid exchange on this '07 IS 350. First thing you're going to need is this transfer pump. It's a special tool provided by Toyota. It helps to get the fluid in there more efficiently. And if you don't have one of these special tools, you can go to your gardening section at Home Depot, and they should have some gardening pumps that you can use. Make sure the hose diameter is similar, so that way you can add the fluid in there. We have your ATF World Standard. Now I'm going to add about 6 quarts of transmission fluid in the pump. Now from the repair manual, it says if the transmission oil pan and drain plug remove, you should add about 1.2 quarts. Transmission valve body remove, add about 3.6 quarts. If the torque converter is removed, add about 4.9 quarts. And if you're doing the whole entire transmission assembly, it takes about 8.3 quarts. But for the sake of this video, we're just doing a fluid exchange, none of the things I mentioned above. So we're going to add 6 quarts into the pump. And it's always better to have more in the pump than less, so you don't have to quickly try to, in the middle of adjusting the fluid level. Later on, you'll see. So you don't have to quickly try to add fluid in there. So I always fill it up to the max. Usually about 6 quarts do the trick. Anytime I'm doing a transmission fluid exchange, it's almost impossible to have the place spotless. It's always fluid everywhere, and it's so hard to keep the area clean. Now we're going to raise the vehicle up, make our way underneath. And now we're going to take a look at our transmission pan. And you're going to find 2 drain plugs underneath, but they're both not drain plugs actually. This is your overflow plug. This is your drain plug. Don't confuse the two because you can ruin your transmission. Drain plug, overflow plug. They both use different sockets to remove them, to loosen them up, I mean. And we have this cover here blocking the fill plug. Just 2 10mm bolts to get that cover off. And they're not on tight, just a regular box end wrench can do the trick. And you want to be careful if you're doing this while the car is hot, because the exhaust manifold is right there. You're going to risk burning your hand, so make sure the car is a little cool off, unless your hand's small enough to get in there easily. Take the 2 10mm bolts out. Here you have your fill plug cover. I'm not really sure why it's there, but Toyota put it there. And here's your fill plug right here. Next, you're gonna get a 14mm socket, and then we're just gonna drain out the transmission fluid from the pan. 14mm, and none of these drain plugs are on tight, so you don't need a big breaker bar or anything. And now we're just gonna remove the old fluid from the pan and just let it all drain out. This is a crucial step. We wanna make sure we get all the fluid out. And while you're draining, you just wanna keep an eye out on things. Maybe check the color of the fluid. That can tell you a lot about how the transmission is wearing out. Does it look discolored? Is it milky? You definitely don't want to see that. Are there chunks and metal shavings coming out? You know, you just be observing. You don't want to do this and walk away and wait till it's empty and then come back. You just want to keep your eye on it. Now, I've seen some guys just say, I'm going to collect the amount that came out of the pan, and I'm just going to top it off with the amount that I collected. I'm going to put it back in the transmission. So if I drain out, you say 2.5 quarts, I'm just going to pump 2.5 quarts. That is not the right way to do it, guys. Because even if you do that, you're still going to need to adjust the fluid level. But, you know, some guys just try to find shortcuts. But you don't want to be that guy. That's not the right way to do it. All right, now we're gonna tighten up our drain plug back up. And from here, you can pretty much tighten up that plug. You won't need to use it again. So go ahead and tighten it up. And always replace the washers too. You don't want to reuse the washers. Get a 24mm socket. Now you're gonna remove the fill plug. But remember, you're gonna have to get that cover loose first. That cover is gonna be blocking it. And again, this is not on tight. Get a feel for how much force is required to remove it, so that way when you're tightening it back up, you have a sense or a feel on how tight it needs to be. Now this is where your special tool from Toyota comes in handy, and if you don't have one, like I said, the gardening pump from Home Depot, because you're going to need to install that into the fill plug. It's already threaded. It's a special hose. You don't have to worry about it slipping back out. It threads right into that hole. And then we just get it on there finger tight. I mean, I've seen guys get a vice grip and really crank them down, and you don't want to do that. Just finger tight, because it's going to be difficult to remove if you tighten it anymore. And it's not going under high pressure, so finger tight should be good. Now you get your 5mm hex socket, and now we're going to loosen up the overflow plug. And now this is while the car is off. As you can see, the fluid going through the hose. I'm just going to fill the transmission pan. We're not adjusting the level yet. Right now we're just adding fluid because we drained it out already. So right now the pan is empty. So I really just want to get fluid inside the pan first before I start the car. All right, now you see it coming out the overflow. It's trickling down. Like I said, we're not adjusting it yet. We just want fluid in the pan, so when we start the car, there can already be fluid in there. All right, now I'm gonna put the overflow plug back. Now I'm gonna lower the car. Now the pan has fluid in there. Now we should be good to start the car up. I'm gonna make my way inside. Now I got the car running. So the torque converter and oil pump's picking up the transmission fluid in the pan. And it's recommended from the repair manual to run through the gears from park to drive. And I do this a couple times. Now I'm gonna do it again from park, reverse, neutral, drive. That way you get the fluid cycling through all the solenoids, the clutches. Now I raise the vehicle back up. Now notice how I still got the transmission pump hose connected to the fill plug. It's better to leave it connected because now you would have to be in a rush to try to get it back and thread it back in the hole. So it's best to just leave it connected. So now while the car is running, the car is still running, you see how the overflow plug is empty now. Nothing's trickling out. Now I'm gonna pump some more fluid in. Some more fluid in. Now this is where the adjustment is gonna be crucial. We already got the fluid in, we got the car running. Now I'm just gonna pump until we get a trickle coming out. Now this step, you wanna have the fluid temperature at a specified range. You don't wanna just fill the transmission fluid, have the car running, and then when you see the fluid trickling out, that's it, you put the plug back. The fluid needs to be at a specified range. And that range is between 102 degrees Fahrenheit, between 102 degrees Fahrenheit and 120 degrees Fahrenheit to accurately check the level. Because what happens is if you adjust the level while the fluid is still cold, then when the fluid gets hot, the fluid is going to expand and there's actually going to be more in the transmission pan or in the transmission system than you anticipated. If you do it while the transmission is hot or too hot, the fluid is already expand, and then when it's cooled down on a cold start, the fluid will kind of condense and thicken back up, and then you'll have less fluid. So when it's cold, transmission fluid is thick, and the hotter it gets, the more it thins out. So that's why the temperature range is important when you're doing this job. And like I said, the temperature range should be between 102 degrees Fahrenheit and 120. Now you have two ways of checking this. You can either have your scanner hooked up to the car and then go under the data list and check the transmission temperature sensor to see if the values are within that. But after doing it for a while, like I've done many transmission fluid exchange, I can pretty much tell just by touching the transmission fluid at what temperature it's at right now. So me, you get a feel with my hand. But if you're not used or accustomed to doing this job, it's better to have a scanner or a scan tool hooked up to the car. So that way it can tell you exactly what the fluid temperature is. Then once I get the fluid temperature at a certain range, like I said, between that 102 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm going to wait for a small trickle to come out. We don't want a lot of fluid coming out, but we just want a little trickle. And that's why it's beneficial to already have as much fluid in that pump as possible, because now I have more than enough in the gallon. As you can see, it's almost emptied out. And I've just been pumping away inside the transmission pan. See, right now there's still a solid stream coming out. We don't want a solid stream, we just want a trickle. And by this, the car's been running for a good 5 minutes. The fluid is already warm to the specified temperature range. So I just wait for that trickle, and then I'm going to put my overflow plug back. And each time you see me putting my hand there, I'm really getting a feel for how hot it is. After a while, I can get a sense for when the temperature is within range. So when I feel it's right, I'm going to install my drain plug or my overflow plug back up. Got my 5mm hex socket. Getting ready to tighten it up. Now, at first, it took me a while to get the concept of the overflow. But if you look at the image towards the left of the screen, that's pretty much the concept. It's not a drain plug. You see how it has that. It goes upward inside the transmission, so you would think the fluid is draining out, but it's actually at a certain level where the fluid trickles out, if that makes any sense. I hope that image kind of illustrates it better. But that's pretty much what's going on inside that overflow plug. That's why they want it at a certain level. You want to make sure the car is at a leveled position, so you don't want it to be jacked up at an angle. That's going to throw the level off. I'm going to install my fill plug back on the transmission. I'm going to tighten it up. Like I said, get a feel for how much force was required to remove it, and then kind of tighten it up with the same torque spec. Or you can just look up the torque specs for it, but I get a feel for when I remove bolts, and then I kind of get a feel for when I'm tightening them back up. You want to spray the excess transmission fluid off the pan. You want to do a nice clean job. You don't want to leave everything sloppy. I'm going to install my cover back up. Two 10mm bolts, like I said. Now the car is running this whole time while I'm doing this. It saves me time to lower it and then bring it back up just to reinstall these components. So by this point, the exhaust manifold is really hot. So be careful. If your hand is small enough to fit in there, then you're doing good. But if your hands are a little big, then you might want to wait till the transmission cool off first, or the car cools off, because the exhaust manifold is going to be super hot. All right, now we got our cover back on and you're pretty much set. Do one last check of the overflow plug and the drain plug. Make sure they're not leaking. Like I said, that's the overflow and the other one was the drain. Lower the car back down. Get ready for our test drive. You want to make sure everything's working and shifting properly before returning it to the customer. And that's it. That's all there is to it, guys. Car shifting fine. No issues here. The transmission fluid is adjusted to the proper specified level, so we don't have to worry about that. If you guys find this video informative, hit the like and subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.